And welcome. Welcome, everybody, to our webinar today with Jake Mahal. My name is Jennifer Ostman. I am an ambassador for the Primal Health Coach Institute, and I am very excited to be talking to Jake today. We're going to be talking about coaching the way humans are designed, which I think is a very, very cool topic. Jake, you are a MovNat practitioner, a certified Primal Health coach, wellness expert. You've got more than 20 years of experience. I am very excited to get to know you a little bit better. So, why don't we dive right in, Jake, and you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up doing the work that you do today?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and yeah, great to be giving back into this community as a primal health coach. And yeah, like you said, Jennifer, it's been a sort of felt like a roller coaster ride for me over the years. Like you said, I've kind of been in the industry in one way or another for a long time as a coach, a practitioner, getting alongside people. And actually, when I did my coaching cert with Primal, realized that I'd probably been coaching in many more ways than I thought right throughout life. But my background really was in coaching different sports and then in sports science through university and then working at the university in the labs in the sports science department, working with athletes and doing a lot of training there. But actually, kind of looking back now, was not really operating in the way that I would want to serve other people and help them kind of fulfill their potential. I didn't feel like I was really doing that, and I was very much I guess, on the back burner when it came to my broader health, even though things looked athletic and what people might consider healthy on the outside. Um, Secretly, I guess I was falling apart on the inside. Um, and yeah, my story really changed when I came back to a load of stuff that I was reading in journal articles. Came across Tim Noakes, that led me to Mark Sisson, and kind of got exposed to a load of literature that wasn't being reflected in what I was learning. It wasn't mainstream, and yet it captured my imagination. And it wasn't until I came back to that and started applying that stuff that my life began to change and perhaps line up with the ideals that I would like to espouse.
Ooh, that's so interesting. I want to dig into that a little bit more. I would love to invite anyone who is watching right now to ask your questions in the chat. So, as we get to know Jake better and as we learn about his story, if you have any questions for Jake, please don't hesitate to ask your questions in the chat. I've made sure that everybody can type to everyone. So test that out for me real quick. If you could type a hello in the chat and let us know where you're calling in from, that would be amazing so that I know that we can see you and that you can see us. And if your questions come through, we can ask Jake. So tell me, Jake, you said over 20 years in the industry. Awesome. Jennifer from Montana, glad you're here. Zebediah from Wisconsin. Gina from New York. Hello from Boston. Amazing. Montana, Mexico City, Moab. Wow, we are all over the country. I love that so much. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Yeah, so okay, now I know that you're all here. Please do ask your questions as we speak with Jake and pick his brain. So I want to hear a little bit more about what you just said, that you've been in the industry for 20 plus years, but internally you said you were falling apart. You were feeling like you were maybe, and I think that is so that resonates with a lot of us. A lot of us in this industry are really good at helping other people with their health and their movement and all of these things. And then sometimes we tend to put ourselves last on the list. So tell me a little bit more about that evolution.
Yeah, so I guess from a kind of sports performance point of view, I was able to kind of crush a bleep test and held various records at the university for different strength kind of bits and bobs. But looking back now, it was my inflammation levels were through the roof. I was overtraining. I was under recovered. My sleep absolutely sucked. I thought it was normal to get up and pee 3 times in the night. And it wasn't until I got married and my wife's like, yeah, this ain't normal. I'm like, oh, isn't it? I thought everyone did that. And I guess I just normalized a lot of kind of, I guess, what I've come to think of as kind of elite athletic creep into normal life. That when
Mm.
you've got athletes and you decide that you're going to try and train like an athlete because that's what Men's Health magazine says, right? That you then end up kind of trying to put that into kind of a regular human life, and it just doesn't work. You don't have the recovery tools. You don't have the luxury of not having to do anything else after game day, and having that downtime and having those specialists around you, having curated nutrition. But you've got the stuff of real life going on. You've got to hold down a job. You've got to, be a husband, a parent. And that's when it really hit the fan for me. Was, oh, now I have to do this stuff alongside just looking after myself. Everything
Mhm.
becomes real, everything becomes heightened. And I've got to start dealing with the joint pain, the inflammation, the chronic hay fever, um, the getting up to pee 3 times in the night and disturbing my wife. Because I'm not the best human being that I could be. My mood was all over the place. My wife literally sent me out to the garden every few days and was like, "You need to go and do a workout." And I was so addicted to exercise, and if I didn't go out and kind of get that adrenaline hit and have the endorphins covering over for the cortisol, my mood was so erratic and all over the place. And when you live like that, you're never going to be the best for the people around you. And I desperately wanted to be that. But the paradigm I was operating in was doing the opposite of what I wanted it to.
Oh, that's so fascinating. And it's so interesting that this perspective of not having the systems and the structure in place that allow you to treat to be an elite athlete at a full-time level when you're realizing like I can't let that like creep in while and take over when I have to be husband and wife or husband and father. And that's really, really fascinating. We've got some great questions already coming in. If you don't mind, I'll pause. Well, for one, Jennifer has a comment. She said, "Yes, it took me getting cancer to finally start healing my body." Isn't that fascinating? That we can teach, we can teach, we can teach, but sometimes walking the talk can be a whole nother lesson to learn, right?
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think I think that's so important that as coaches, we have real integrity and we do, walk the walk. And I was trying to do that, and I think most of us are trying to do that. But like with the clients that we're wanting to serve, there's either a lack of information or a lack of people who are going to walk it alongside you, and make that habit change possible.
Yeah, really well said. Jason's asking, did you experience any unexpected positive health changes as you progressed through your movement journey? Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual?
Yeah, wow, that's a way to go deep. But yeah,
Yeah,
totally. I
we're going deep
did.
fast.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, when I backed off the kind of intensity of training and for me, both MovNat and coming back to a primal lifestyle kind of really came at the same time and coalesced. And the two things together, I think the deepest thing that I would say is that I reclaimed a sense of agency, um, and trust with my own body. I think for a long time it was easy to go, there's just something broken. There's nothing I can do about it. Maybe this is genetics. You can take bits of information from family history and you can conflate them into something that I guess fits the narrative, removes personal responsibility. But through getting these pieces of the puzzle, not just in an academic sense, but in an applied sense, allowed me to see that inputs that I was giving my body genuinely led to outputs. Both through my movement journey as I started kind of reclaiming, crawling, getting up and down from the floor, hanging, vaulting, all these natural movements that were in some ways less intense, but it gave me the breadth that my body was craving. Allowed my body to start moving in more natural ways. Overuse injuries, which were common before, they started to become more background. And then on the flip side of things, with what I was nourishing myself with, I was actually replenishing. Inflammation levels dropped, and that happened so quickly. When I decided I was going all in on the way that I was going to eat, within about 3 weeks, my hands stopped being chronically sweaty, which, my wedding ring fell off. It just wouldn't stay on anymore, because my hands were so much smaller, which a number of clients have that as well. I get blamed for people not wearing wedding rings anymore. Um,
That is funny. Yeah, that's an
um,
unexpected positive
yeah.
side effect. Yeah.
Hay fever went, stopped getting up to pee in the night, weight started falling off. I'd always struggled with higher levels of body fat than I wanted, and that just kind of happened, almost as a happy side effect of feeling better, mood being better, being more energized. Yeah, so um, yeah, it felt amazing, but at a deeper sort of level, um, it was that sense of agency, and I've got some control. I can trust my body, and I guess that brings a sense of wholeness, peace, integration with yourself that I think a lot of people live without, and that's really multifaceted. But I think a big part of that is just feeling at home in your own body.
That's so well said, and I think that's something that you can. I think people can relate to that regardless of where they are in their journey, right? I think feeling at home in your own body is something that most of us can probably say that we don't. We don't know that feeling, and so being able to have that feeling is so incredible. And then being able to trust yourself because you now know what it feels like to be home in your body and be able to trust the messages that your body is sending you. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Zebediah's got a great question. Whenever I do primal like movement in the gym, I feel very goofy looking. However, I know sometimes that's the point, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a bit. I think I struggle the most is the thing I struggle the most with is when trying to encourage others to try some non-traditional training. They often pull back and get scared because of the newness. How do you go about helping others to try more primal movement when they're struggling with looking silly at the gym? Great, great question.
Yeah, I guess most of my clients we're outside of that gym setting. So often we'll be in play parks, we'll be in woodlands, and I think that I mean our environment shapes us. You know, we know that as coaches, don't we? That the importance of environment is just huge. And I think changing that environment is quite helpful because the gym for many people, it does have that constricting kind of environment. There's a certain etiquette depending on where you're at in a gym. So that'd be one thing is perhaps change the environment. I think the other thing is meeting them where they're at. You know, what is their training history? What is their experience? And maybe drawing on what's outside of the immediate of what we're seeing in the gym as well. But what have they picked up from different sports they've played, stuff they did when they were a kid? One thing I love having people do, and we have another business that's teaching antenatal classes, so we're rubbing up with against kind of parents and kids a lot of the time, and that whole dynamic. One of the things I love getting parents doing is mirroring their kids as they're growing and literally stripping it back to you watch a baby, they're on their back, they learn to roll over to their front, then they build a base, and then they hip hinge to stand, or maybe they crawl. And I think giving people that framework of this is what humans are made to do. This is what the environment has shaped us for. And as we've evolved and we've become competent at navigating that environment, these skills are prerequisites to everything else that gets built on top of it. And I think when you can give them that lens to view things through, things make more sense. And if you can start with those movements, and they don't look too different to yoga, which, most people are really familiar with now, it doesn't feel too alien. And then when you build up from there, and you start stacking those pieces on top of that solid foundation, I think people, they don't actually look as goofy, they look competent. So, it kind of ticks that box. But also they have a real solid understanding of why you're suggesting that they put these movements in that maybe don't look like sort of traditional gym moves.
That's great. That's really actionable. I appreciate that. That's a good answer. Craig says, "What was your prior training regime and what does it look like today?"
Yeah. Um, Man, yeah, I'm gonna have to dig deep into some memory here, but at its most extreme, I was getting up 6 a.m., running to the pool, doing a swim, running back from the pool. 3 p.m. came round. I was then in the gym, doing some strength training, and then playing whatever sport was on offer in the evening after people finished work, which could have been a racket sport, martial arts, um, various other bits and bobs that I kind of turn my hand to anything sports wise. So I play everything. So there was kind of real chronic cardio going on. I was not measuring my heart rate zones, anything like that. My breathing was shocking. So yeah, there was kind of that morning blast of chronic cardio. Then there was strength training 6 days a week. And a lot of that was fairly functional. It wasn't like a gym bro split or anything like that. It was supporting sport, but it was just way OTT. And that kind of carried over into married life as well. I was getting up early and I was typically going for a run, because it was easy. You could fit it in and you could get that sort of hit of endorphins pretty quickly. And then the afternoon would roll around and I'd be hankering after hitting the weights out in the garden. Nowadays, the morning starts with gentle restorative movement, that natural development sequence of getting up and down from the floor, some crawling maybe, um, and then it'll be sort of either or at this point. So it might be integrating natural movement into some strength work. Um, Potentially doing structuring a something that looks like a hit session, which is really short, sharp, and intense, but using those same natural movements, often adding weight, vaulting, climbing quickly, but moving my body in really diverse ways. And then sometimes, recently, there's a paddle club that's opened near where I live, so I've reignited my love of racket sports, and that's a kind of good zone for me. Ambling around the court, but it's just great kind of social stuff as well. Getting alongside people. It's a great place to be hanging out in terms of just being able to serve people as well. People are often playing paddle because they want to get fit, and it's a great place for me to hang out and just gently coach some people as well. So yeah, I've really backed it off. It's so much broader, so much more diverse. Most of my training sessions now are not in a gym. They're in the back garden. They're up a tree. They're vaulting over something. I'm scratching a kind of innate play itch that's within me as well. And it's a lot of fun. And it's super practical. Everything carries over into everyday life. And I mean, in some ways, they're inseparable. I mean, we've kind of curated our home to be very movement rich. We sit on the floor, and there's various things to hang on. There's monkey bars that go to the bedroom, just to really push the caricature of being a primal health coach and MovNat guy. But again, environment shapes us, so you kind of set things up just to facilitate movement all day, every day.
Okay, I need to know more detail about all the things that you added to your house. That's awesome. I love that so much. But before we do, yeah, monkey bars going to the bedroom. I love that. Since we're on this topic of before and after, I think this is a really good visual of what you did before, what you did now. Excuse my dog. Looking back, was it? Craig is asking, was it like an adrenaline dopamine addiction? You mentioned that you felt very addicted to exercise. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it was totally an adrenaline thing. Um, yeah, it was that addiction to the endorphin rush that comes with the cortisol spike. Your body's freaking out, and it's got to, you're putting it in survival mode ultimately. There's that proverbial bear or saber-toothed tiger, but it's there every day. Why is it there every day? But yeah, totally addicted to that. And I think really I was covering over for, just not feeling good, not feeling at home in my body because I was on this roller coaster of intensity crash, intensity crash, intensity crash, going around in that cycle rather than just feeling cool, calm, collected, and adding the intensity on as a bit of spice, giving my body time to recover in between, and learning to feel good and just, yeah, at home in my own skin again.
I love that. I find that that's something that people are saying now is spice. For some reason, I'm catching that verbiage. I hear when I go work out and I'm talking to people in the industry, we're adding a little spice to it. This might be a little spicy. I love that. So Brian Betancourt, who is saying hello, the director of performance at MovNat, thanks for being here, Brian, is asking how has that changed your performance overall?
Oh man, my performance is so much better than it used to be, especially if you zoom out and you look at the breadth of it. Um, I'm probably not bench pressing what I used to. I've not measured that for years, so it's not important anymore. But my performance in day-to-day life is so much better. My hips used to suck. My hip mobility, my hip strength was so poor. And just that one change has now unlocked so many more movements to me that makes me more diverse. Even in something like playing paddle, one of the comments I get a lot is, "Man, you're like a spider around the court." I can get down to shots that other people just can't get to. And that's because my hips aren't sticky anymore. And the same things happen with my feet, my ankles, from a lifetime of wearing foot prisons, having weak, tired feet, getting out of those, really rehabbing from the ground up. Yeah, and like Brian just said there, that diversity is key. But also just not relentlessly training one pattern again and again. If you're in a gym, even a well-equipped one, and you're kind of using different machines and you know how to train functionally, typically you'll be using the same patterns again and again. Whereas when you're out in nature, whilst you're using similar movement patterns, you have to come up with slightly different solutions the whole time, because the branch is angled differently that you're trying to swing from or jump over, or the surface of the rock slightly different, so your technique has to change. And that perfect form that you've been taught to use in the gym actually is something that holds you back, because, and actually this is something I stolen from Brian, is you only have one solution to a problem, whereas having multiple solutions to a problem, that carries over into everyday life, because the reality is, even if you're not kind of out in nature in trees or amid rocks, that life throws curveballs, and you've got to be ready for that. And that diversity of training gives you the resilience for those curveballs.
Sounds like a good lesson overall. Physical, mental, emotional. Life throws you curveballs, right? Resilience is important. I love it. Jason says, is there any area or ideas that get you fired up and excited about where the primal movement space is heading? Any predictions based on your experience in the industry?
Oh, sorry, just repeat the question.
Yeah, what are your predictions? Anything that's going to get you what you're feeling fired up about, excited about regarding the primal movement space, where it's heading? Anything that you are forecasting or seeing on
Hmm.
the horizon?
Yeah, so I think within sort of, think about primal movement with sort of ancestral movement and moving in patterns that are practical. I think people are starting to wake up for that. People have been talking about functional training for a long time. I think the next logical step is the idea of something that is truly practical, adaptable, efficient. And people are starting to think more holistically. We're not just thinking about borrowing from Men's Health magazine or whatever anymore, and that merging of athletic into everyday life. We're starting to genuinely think about, how does this transfer into my everyday life, but also how does my everyday life have to change to best facilitate what robust human health looks like. And, for a long time, we've had a reactive model of healthcare. Things are starting to change. And I think, pretty much anyone who's on this call is part of a pioneering movement to drive that change, where we're saying we're not willing to continue to be reactive. We want to be proactive, and we want to start retrofitting things into our lives which are beneficial for us and beneficial for the next generation, so that they don't have to inherit the same thing that we inherited. That's what really fires me up, and that's what really excites me, is that we get to be part of shaping the next generation in a way where they're not on the back foot like we were when we started, because we're starting to actually put those core principles back in place that humans have evolved on, that we need, whether that's, the movement piece, the way that we're eating, shaping environments, the way that we're breathing, how we're stressing, how we're sleeping. All of that stuff needs to come together and coalesce. But that holistic stuff um, is starting to come to the fore. And I think people who are in, the primal health coach space, the MovNat space, we're very, very well positioned to speak into that, to model that, and to be part of that change.
Yeah, it really is amazing to see all of these things coming to the forefront when you speak with people who are not in the space. And, sometimes I think that we get so involved in our space that we remember, and then I go out and I say, "Oh, I talk to people who are not in this industry," and I think I feel I see more and more of that coming to the forefront
Mhm.
of normal everyday conversation, which is very cool to see. Very cool to see. Um, okay, this is a great question. Craig has a question, and then Zebediah, I want to have a follow-up to this question. What do you do to slow down? The yin versus yang. Do you do Tai Chi, yoga, meditation? What's your favorite way to slow down?
Um, I think my favorite way has become different breathwork practices. Um, is getting into my parasympathetic nervous system and even kind of that switching between sympathetic and parasympathetic breathing patterns has been a great way for me to A, be still, because my default is movement, and I recognize that I do need that stillness. Um, but there's kind of a focus to it, and particularly sort of things like breath holding, really allowing carbon dioxide to build inside me. It feels like a really good reset. And it kind of, for me, it feels like a sort of spiritual experience as well. So that's been really helpful recently. Um, I think the other big thing for me has just been embracing family and being together and prioritizing family time, playing board games, making time to cuddle, wrestle, all that kind of stuff, whether that's with my wife, my daughter, the dog. Um, that's so key. And I think, as humans, a core part of how we're evolved is for a tribe. I see that in my clients, and it's been a really important part of what I've curated for them as well, is making sure they have community with each other. Um, yeah, I think we're so dislocated these days. It's really easy to live a fast-paced life, but I think the fast pace leads to individualism. And there's a real danger, the busyness. If we can slow down, we can be together in community. Yes, things take longer, but they're richer, deeper, and they help us drop into that parasympathetic state so much better.
Really well said. And I think that we have a tendency, maybe I'm speaking of the people I work with or the people I know, to have guilt around that community, that time, that cuddling, that playing games that, we know that we're supposed to, but we also know that there's a million things that we should be doing and checking things off the list, especially if we are in a place where we're working on our health as well as our career, everything at the same time. And so I think that to hear that community and time with your family and downtime that is not actually quote unquote productive is actually very productive when it comes to optimizing your health. That's great to hear. I love it. So, a great follow-up question from Zebediah. I often feel exhausted from workouts and regular daily activity. I don't know whether the tiredness is a sign to rest more or if it's just part of the process of moving towards my fitness goals as I recondition my habits. How do you improve your ability to interpret your body's signals?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Um, I think partly that has come through the slowing down and just learning to breathe, to body scan, go, what does my body need right now? And then through trial and error, and giving it that sort of more restorative movement and go, does this feel good right now? Yeah, it does feel good. I can amp it up slightly. Um, does this feel like it's counterproductive right now? Maybe. I'm going to back it off and see how that works. So I think there's that part of intuition around it. I do think there's probably room for tools like measuring our heart rate variability as well. I very clearly see a trend if I'm about to get ill with a virus or something like that. I'm like, this is starting to come down a little bit. I'm going to opt for more restorative movement, rather than, today is definitely not going to be a sprint day, or I'm not going to do some hit training. So I think there's room for tools like that, but you do build intuition over time. I think, to Zebediah's point, there definitely is a bit of inertia when it comes to movement, and I think the more you move, the more your body craves it. Obviously, that can flip over to where I was in my past life. So I'm aware of that. And I think because I've got that awareness and I know what that feels like, and I know if I'm starting to rely on that dopamine hit too much from exercise, then I know I need to claw it back. But I think really that does come through trial and error. And again, I think it comes back to the busyness piece. When we sit still long enough, or when we just decompress enough, it's easier to really know what's going on in our own body rather than being on autopilot and getting distracted.
Awesome. Awesome. Well said. Great questions, you guys. I appreciate all of the diverse questions. Craig says, have you investigated functional patterns? Is this similar to MovNat with rehab as a foundation? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've come across people more and more talking about functional patterns, particularly on social media, and the idea that you want to use patterns that are, geared towards the way the human body functions and the things we do. And I think there is some similarity there to the sort of idea of of practical movement. I think probably the way they diverge a little bit, or at least, I mean, probably not conceptually, but I think in the way that people who are talking about these things flesh them out, is that functional pattern often can still become a repetitive motion that's done and done again in a sort of chronic way, rather than genuinely sort of being part of that diverse um, movement skill set that genuinely is moved towards problem solving. It still, I think, very easily trips over into kind of conditioning that has just borrowed from a functional or practical pattern. So I don't. There's probably not a difference conceptually, but I think the way those terms get applied, probably that's where you start to see the difference coming out.
That's really fascinating. This is a great question from Elena. What are your top recommendations for helping kids retain their natural movements? And what kind of environment changes are easiest for the average family to make to support natural movements at home?
Yeah, so I think one of the things for helping them keep hold of those, I mean, yeah, kids get put in chairs a lot and things like that. And sadly, our things like our school system expects that. So that's a difficult one to navigate. You know, if you're going down the homeschooling route, then sure, you can totally curate their environment. If they're going into mainstream school, there's going to be an expectation that they kind of sit there. I think it's well worth having conversations with their teachers about that and about the school about that and being involved in their education and making sure that you're driving towards that. But as far as it depends on you in your own home, going low furniture, I think, is great. Encouraging floor sitting because then you're continuing to get up and down from the floor using diverse ways. You watch a kid get up and down from the floor 10 times, they'll use different methods. And, partly depending on their mood, what's going on, whether one body part is feeling overused, or just the context that they're in. And so I think that's really, really important. And then in terms of kind of what you can add to your home, I think it's great just to give kids opportunities to have the diversity of movement. So can you climb in your home? Most kids end up learning to climb on the rail on the oven door. That then, depending on how stiff the door is, it comes open. It's a great lesson for them in terms of kind of physics. But where do they progress from there? Is there somewhere they can climb? Is there somewhere they can hang? That might be out in the garden, but again, you might do what we've done and put monkey bars in the home or a pull-up bar on the way to the kitchen, um, so that um, so that they're encouraged to do that, and it's not something that they are taken away from, or they're not just given flat surfaces. We have a number of, well, I've got this down at my feet, which is kind of a textured wobbly thing. Sometimes it's a full-on wobble board or a slack line. There's just stuff to kind of get in the way that kind of prompts you to use it, or it's stuff that you've got to step over and navigate, and that keeps you moving naturally. And I mean, we've got kind of tatami rugs in the house, so it makes it kind of more appealing to sit on the floor, very natural to sit on the floor. And you watch people just come in and do it. So I think it's things like that where you make it obvious that that's kind of expected and it's normal and model it. That's the most important thing. If you're doing it, the kids are going to do it. There's no point telling a child what to do. You want to show your children what to do.
Yeah, well, so what I'm hearing is to make your life more and less convenient, right? Less and less convenient to be able to just kind of sit and do nothing, be still, right? Make movement movement obvious. I love that.
Mm.
Love that. Rhonda says, what would you suggest for people who are 50 and older and haven't exercised for years?
Mm. Yes, I would be thinking about starting in the same place a baby starts because, they're starting with zero movement. And if you've kind of regressed to the point where you're back towards, a low movement lifestyle, then start with those same things. Start with learning to roll from your front to your back, learning to sort of navigate the floor well. Start with learning to crawl on your hands and knees, then crawl on your hands and feet. Start to build that requisite strength in your core, in your hips, that mobility and strength that kind of comes together through that sort of work. And then from there, progress it up to taking those same movements and standing. If you're pushing up from the floor, then pushing while you're standing and eventually learning to kind of push your full body weight. Yeah, that's the place to start. I love one of the things that one of the guys in MovNat, when I was doing my first certification, he said the answer's always on the floor. And I think that's true. You know, you can take any exercise, regress it down to the floor. It's going to be safe, it's going to be accessible, and you can find something that will work for everyone.
That's great. That's really great advice. The floor is the foundation. Nice. Real quick, what kind of rugs did you mention?
Oh, tatami rugs, like traditional Japanese rugs. We have ones that are kind of they're based on the tatami, but they're kind of fluffy on top. So they're great for babies to crawl around on, for kids to crawl around on. My wife teaches baby massage and baby yoga on them. So they're really cool. Here in the UK, they're called the Snug Rug Company, but I think there are equivalents probably on your side of the pond as well.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, let's talk about your certification. So you are a certified primal health coach,
Mhm.
MovNat, obviously. Why did you decide to pursue certification rather than just, learning? You obviously learned a lot on your own. What is the importance of the certification?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'm a geek, so I'm just like, oh, there's a rabbit hole. We're going to go deep. We're going to find, how deep this goes, and we'll keep going. So that was part of it. It was part of that sort of intellectual curiosity. Um, but I knew that within this, I wanted to not just serve myself, but serve other people. And I think when you decide that you're going to serve other people, I mean, it's an amazing privilege to be able to serve other people, but I think, with that privilege comes responsibility, and you want to make sure that you have got the different boxes checked. Um, you're not just relying on your own experience, but you're relying on a trusted, proven framework where you can step back and not just see it from your own point of view, but you've got a bunch of other people who've, been there before you, they're there alongside you, and you've got a wealth of sort of evidence base that you can draw on so that you're able to serve people with that depth and breadth, and yeah, not be left guessing for any of the scenarios that a client might show up with, but be able to know what resources to point them towards, even if you don't have the answer right there and then. You know that you are part of something bigger, a container in which you can pull from to then resource your client. Yeah, I think it really gives you or certainly this has been my experience, is that it kind of really gives a backbone that helps you hold a bunch of different sort of tactics together, which could feel quite nebulous and out there. And I mean, the internet's full of health hacks, but it's drawing that all together and going, here's a trusted framework, a lens with which to view these different tactics through so that they become a cohesive strategy with tactics that you may dip into or out of. And I think that's what I learned through my certification, was what those sort of granular tactical things are we can help clients with, but also the frameworks that you can use as a coach to facilitate that behavior change. And every client's going to be different. They're going to have different needs, and you have got a number of different tools in your kit then, which you can use to best serve that client, which you just wouldn't have without certification. You would be relying just on your own knowledge, which and your kind of own experience, which is valuable, but I think a lot of people become unstuck at a point where they're just relying on their own experience. Um, and yeah, I don't think they're fully serving a client in the way that is client centered at that point. So that's been my experience of certification.
Yeah, and do you feel that when do you feel a client, I'm sorry, when do you feel a coach is truly prepared to help to step into that coach role? Is it that certification? Is there anything else? Is it a specific certification, or is it a specific experience that they have that would help them feel very ready, even if they've had the passion, feel very ready to
Hmm.
step into the coach role?
Yeah, I think it's the two things. Your experience and your own health transformation is really powerful and it's really important. And if you've not lived it, I mean, what credibility do you have to sort of speak into anybody else's life about it, really? But at the same time, it's being able to stand back and see the bigger picture. And I think the certification really um, grounds you, and it's not a tick box exercise. It's not that you've got that rubber stamp of approval, but you've put the reps in. You have you've drilled yourself, and I mean, this was my experience, particularly through the Master Coach certification, was that you were with a bunch of peers, you're with an expert facilitator. They're going to expose your blind spots. They're going to call you out on stuff, but they're going to do that in a way that because they want you to be the best that you can be, and you're going to do that for them as well. And I think until you've got those reps in, those kind of, bits of practice, going out and trying to serve a client as well as you could do, you're going to fall short. But also, I think it helps you show up with confidence. And clients see that. If you're not confident in what you're doing, they're going to see through it. And then they're going to feel shaky, and their kind of road to behavior change is going to feel muddy. They're going to lose confidence. Whereas if you show up with confidence and clarity, that helps your clients find that confidence and clarity. And again, that was my experience of both the certifications that I've done. And just to say, um, being part of kind of health coaching body here in the UK, you meet people who've certified through different schools. And I'm just really glad that I chose both Primal Health Coach Institute and MovNat, because I think they're both a cut above the rest in terms of the education and the skill set that they offer and give to us and continue to give to us as coaches.
Agreed. Agreed. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Brian says, I have a client who's a physician. He asked me how to learn more about nutrition and health coaching. I sent him to Primal. He is doing it now for the same reasons to serve others. You want to provide the best service, and fully understanding something or being able to provide the right resources is so useful. Yeah. Yeah. And so you said, that confidence and clarity, showing up with confidence and clarity. I completely agree. How do you, if and I agree that certification brings some of that, but I also think that it may still be nerve-wracking to start taking your first clients even after you have that certification. So do you feel that was there anything else that brought you confidence and clarity um, in order and can new coaches borrow that from somewhere else? Can they kind of fake it till they make it? Can you fake confidence until you feel that you've got enough reps under your belt to be able to have your own confidence because you've got your own experience with the testimonials and the people that you've helped?
Um, I certainly don't think you can fake it till you make it. But you can totally borrow experience and borrow those reps. And I think that's where the community side of things comes in. Is finding people to be in coaching practice groups with. So when I did the master coach certification, we had our sessions, but basically all of us who were located in Europe, we got together weekly and we coached each other. So we all got free coaching, which was great. But we're also kind of debriefing each other's coaching, using the community to sharpen our skills, getting reps under our belt, and we were able to give each other genuine testimonials as well, because we had all helped each other during that process. I also took on kind of test clients who were friends who were interested in what I was doing. I'd posted a little bit about the process. They'd shown interest, and I said, "Hey, do you want to try this with me? I'm still certifying, but I believe you'll really benefit from this." And it allowed me to go through that cycle, figure some stuff out again, gather some testimonials, build my confidence, and yeah, from there, when I did sign my first paying client, I'm like, yeah, I got this. I can do this. I feel affirmed by the other coaches around me. They've seen me coach, and feel affirmed by the people that I've already been able to serve, without them paying. So yeah, I think I'd encourage anyone to do that. Go through the cert, meet people who are part of this community, whether that's the MovNat community or the Primal community. Make friends, get alongside each other, help each other out in every way that you can, because ultimately we're all gonna upskill together there, and then we can all, help serve our clients, but each other's clients vicariously.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned when you signed your first paying client versus the people you had helped without charging. Do you find I've heard conflicting advice about this, and I think it could be true on either side. Do you find that for brand new coaches, it is better to get the reps and to help as many people as you can right there out of the gate, even if it means you're doing it for free or for a severely discounted rate for your friends and family? I've also, on the flip side of that, heard no, charge what you're worth. And if you are looking for people who are going to be committed to coaching, you got to get them to invest in it financially as physically. So, what is your advice there for new coaches? Is it better To go for it and not charge, or to go to charge what you're worth right out of the gate?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, really. Having people who I didn't charge worked really well for me. They were committed people. Like, I knew them well enough to know that these people are going to follow through. I can totally see why that would be difficult with some people where you weren't charging as much. And I've seen that even in my own journey through putting my prices up. I increase my prices, people commit more, and they get greater change. So I really understand that thought process that someone might say, no, I need to charge out the gate. If you've got the confidence to charge out of the gate and you've got people willing to pay, do it. If you've already kind of cut your teeth with other coaches, you got some affirmation, they go, yeah, you're doing great. Your feedback isn't constantly, yeah, still stuck in teaching mode. Maybe you want to coach more. Then get those reps and keep getting that. Take that feedback. Be honest with yourself about what that feedback is. Ask other people to be honest with you, because then you'll know whether you're ready to go out and stick a price tag on it or whether it's good to keep getting those reps in.
Nice, nice, awesome. All right, another question from Zebediah. During my Primal Health Coach Institute studies, I often get overwhelmed with all the intricate details, especially regarding biological terminology or scientific principles. Do you often find clients testing your knowledge about the science behind everything, or do they more so just care about the big picture and the practical effects the training is having on them?
Definitely the latter. It's very rare a client wants to dig into the weeds. Um, my guess is that if they were the kind of person who wanted to dig into that granular detail, they'd be doing it themselves, and they would probably be in our position. Um, my experience is that we're the geeks on this stuff. We're the people who sort of love learning more and more and more and more and getting another certification and digging into this book, that book, and the other book, rather than kind of getting on with it. So I don't think you need to commit all of that stuff to memory. The reality is that you can always go away and look at that stuff again if and when you need to, and if a client is coming to you with it. And also, I think it's totally valid to say to a client, "Oh, I can't remember those terms, but this is the sort of takeaway. This is how you're going to feel in your body. This is my experience. This is what other clients have experienced." I've had one or two clients who have been sort of into the geeky deep dive stuff. Um, I can think of two, I think, out of a couple of hundred. Um, so they're not going to come around that often. I don't think it's something to worry about. Get out there, get coaching. People will see that enough to take them on the journey. You only need to be one step ahead of your clients.
I found that when I was putting together curriculum for some of my clients, I wanted to geek. I was like, I want to geek out. I want to tell you everything. I want to teach you everything. And the more I was giving, the more education I was giving, the less they were interested. They were like, just
Mhm.
tell me what to do so that I can feel better. And then I just want to give just enough so that they understand the why behind it, but not so much that they glaze over and they're like, I don't need to know any of this information.
Mhm.
Yeah, Brian says you are only the expert when asked. You understanding terminology is for you to understand what you're speaking of. My advice, learn it this way. One, what is it? Two, what does it do? Three, why does it do what it does? Four, what are its limitations? That will help you define and internalize it. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, Brian. That's awesome. Thank you.
I think that's great. And
Awesome.
just being able to simplify those concepts, I think that's such a really important thing that we do is when a client asks, we want to give them a real simple, really understandable answer, with as little jargon as possible.
Yeah, and that gets them to, okay, now I understand why I want to do this, why I need to do this. For example, I like to tell people, hey, here is why stomach acid is actually pretty important for digestion. And now you understand why. You don't need to know all the details of it, but now you understand why so that you can continue to do things that will improve your digestion. That is just that tidbit of education so people can have that motivation long after they work with you, right?
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. Are there any other questions from you guys, this amazing audience? You guys had such good questions as we have been talking with Jake. Brian says, "What are the biggest dietary habits that clients present, and how do you help them overcome it? Oh, for example, alcohol consumption."
Yeah, I mean, every client is really different. For one person, it's going to be, it is going to be that alcohol consumption, potentially sort of borderline addiction kind of stuff. which then kind of goes outside of our scope, and it's making sure that we know where that is. Um, yeah, I think everything's really different. I think the thing that I see presenting uh, probably most in terms of dietary kind of constraints or what goes on with clients is emotional eating. Is we've been sold food as a crutch and as a socially acceptable one. And I think that's probably one of the things I find myself working with clients to disentangle quite a lot. Classic one is you grew up with a mom or a dad who gave you a cookie to make you feel better when you'd fallen over, and you're still self-soothing with cookies now when you've had a bad day at work. So it's going into those stories, I think, disarming them, bringing them out into the light through asking good questions, helping people identify them, and I think that then really helps demystify what's going on inside the client, just giving them space to talk that out. I think that's the biggest thing that I come across on repeat.
Awesome. And Elena is going to wrap us up with one of the most important questions. Where can we find you? Where do we find more information about MovNat? And is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so you can find more about me at wholelifehealth.uk. I'm also on Instagram at Coach Jake Mahal. I mean, there's LinkedIn and Facebook and that sort of stuff as well. If you look for Jake Mahal, I think there's only one of me around. So you'll find me in those places. You want to find more about MovNat, head to movnat.com. That's a great starting point. Get on the mailing list to get some weekly free workout ideas. There's some great stuff on there. You can find out where a local MovNat trainer is going to be to you if you want to train in person. Online resources are brilliant as well. Some great online courses, from mobility, metabolic conditioning, all these things using natural movement, and then obviously the certifications. If you're already a primal health coach, I really encourage you to consider doing a MovNat cert as well. They just synthesize so well, and I think between the two there are little bits of discounts you can get if you're one and looking at the other as well. So that's quite cool.
Amazing. Awesome. Yes. And if you're not a primal health coach yet, we highly recommend you connect with one of our team members to talk about that. We are here to help answer all your questions about these certifications. Okay. Ending on a very serious question from Craig. Where did you get your goggles? Are they Bono's?
Yeah, stole them from Bono. Um, yeah, these are from Block Blue Light. So they're a company in the UK. There will be equivalents in different parts of the world. You just want to make sure that they've actually been tested to genuinely block these block blue and green lights. Everything is very orange right now. It's coming up to 11 p.m. So I'm going straight to bed after this, and I want my melatonin levels to be nice and high.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, blockbluelight.com is where I got them from, but I'm sure there are other good places in your part of the world as well.
Amazing. All right. Well, we won't keep you up late any longer. Have a great evening. Thank you for the wonderful conversation. Thanks for the amazing questions from you guys. I really appreciate this wonderful conversation, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thanks for having me. And it's great to have you all here as well.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.